Hello and welcome. In this video edit, I'm really gonna push the boundaries of what is possible, and I'm gonna take Vincent's picture of this geyser and I'm gonna turn it into a photo like this, while of course explaining every single step I do. This is a JPEG file and unfortunately not a RAW file, which means that we're not going to be able to push it as far and not remain as much of the detail. But since these viewer edits are just for the overall look and really to show you what is possible even with a JPEG file, I don't really think that it's gonna matter that much for the overall look. Alright, so let's get started here. First thing that definitely distracts me is this group of tourists with these buses and stuff. You could try to clone this away, and I'm actually gonna do that with the spot removal tool, but if you select such a large area, it can oftentimes be very difficult for Lightroom to find a nice clone. Actually, this one looks amazing. This one looks really natural. Just the only problem is that we have two guys right here, two clones, so let me actually grab another spot removal tool and just remove the original guy, and problem solved. That actually was way easier than I thought. Anyways, the next thing, I think I am going to crop the image at least a little bit. There's just a bit too much sky, so I think that looks a lot better. So let's get started with the basics adjustments. Always love to bring up the shadows and bring down the highlights by 100, just so we have a very neutral look and a lot of detail in both highlights and shadows to work with. Then I also like to bring up the whites. You can hold down the Alt key and you just want to make sure that you don't clip anything, but the whites always help to give more dynamic in the picture. And the blacks, actually before I adjust the blacks, I think I'm gonna go to contrast and add a lot of contrast. It's definitely needed in this photo, and I think it works really well. It really makes the picture pop. And because I've added so much contrast, I really don't think that there's any minus blacks needed. So I'm just gonna leave that at 0. In terms of clarity now, I can see that you might be tempted to go plus clarity here, but honestly, because especially here we have a steam in the middle of the picture, I think that is almost a little bit distracting when I go into the plus clarity. And because it's such a soft and almost sort of mysterious kind of picture, I think actually going into the minus clarity might work even better here. You definitely don't want to do something like that, but if I go around minus 40 maybe, I think that looks actually really good. Yeah, here's before at 0 clarity and here's at minus 40. I think it works a lot better for this picture. Then vibrance and saturation. Usually I always go into the plus vibrance, but sometimes there are just certain tones that work better with the saturation. For example, this dirt or whatever that is. I think color there gets added a little bit better by saturation, so I'm just gonna bring that one up. Definitely can also play around with both sliders, vibrance and saturation, and just go with whatever you like best. I think that works pretty well here. Then another very important thing is, of course, actually before I adjust the exposure, let me go to color temperature and adjust that one, because of course this is a JPEG file. We're also not gonna have too many possibilities here, but just I might go a little bit more into the blues actually, and yeah, that works even better. And in terms of tint, I think there might just be a little bit too much green, so let me bring up that tint by around plus 6. So really subtle adjustment, but I think it works. So back to exposure, I mean it's well exposed, but it's almost too bright. I think for this very soft and very rainy, mysterious, dramatic mood, a little bit into the minus exposure could actually work really well. Now, when you adjust the exposure, it's very important that you only look for the actual exposure. Don't look how the dynamic or the interest kind of changes. Just look at the overall exposure. For example, if I bring down the exposure, obviously these parts are gonna look boring and flat. but I can always fix that later, so always just fixate on the exposure. And I think if I go quite far down here, for the most parts of the picture, I really like how it actually looks. Of course, there are some areas that are way too dark and boring and could use a little bit of interest, and I'm gonna do that in a second with the rail filter. But before I do that, let's go down to the tonal curve, and this tool also has a very big impact to your photo. I think I'm gonna raise the highlights here, especially helps to give more dynamic in the sky. And in terms of the other sliders, just play around with them and stick with whatever you like best. And I think bringing up the lights actually works really well here, and with the shadow slider, and yeah, I think that works pretty well. Tonal curve sometimes has more, sometimes has less of an impact, but it's a very easy tool, very fast tool, and definitely take advantage of it. So let's go to the rail filter, as I previously said, and just straight away add some dodge and burning. So dodge and burning is of course making individual parts darker or brighter. I'm sure you've heard me say that a ton, but the idea is just to amplify the exposure, make the bright parts a little bit brighter in general, make the dark parts a little bit darker, but also go over the flat parts that aren't really bright or dark, and just add some interest in terms of plus exposure. You could also mix that with minus plus contrast, minus and plus clarity. There's really a lot of possibilities, so I think I'm gonna maybe even try to add some color. I'm not quite sure if it will work. Maybe a bit into the purples here. Yeah, just a bit. And go of course into the plus exposure. And actually, before I do any other small rail filters, let me grab a very big one here and just bring up the exposure for that one and kind of angle it so it looks like the light from the sky is shining upon the scene. And with the rail filters, you know, you do it very subtle, and I think it works actually really well in this case. So after that, I think I'm gonna definitely add another plus exposure filter over these guys here, and maybe even mix that with a little bit of plus clarity, and definitely right click duplicate that. Just go over the neutral and already sort of bright spots and just amplify that a little bit to create additional interest and complexification in terms of lighting. So let me finish up here. I can also make this kind of mist or this vaporized water a little bit brighter and make it a little bit more pronounced. Really amazing what you can do with the rail filters. You can always look how it looks, and of course delete an adjustment if it doesn't work. That's also the great thing with the rail filters. You can just go to each and every one individually and adjust or delete just that one. And I think in terms of plus exposure, I'm pretty much done here. So let me grab another set of adjustment brushes and this time go into the minus exposure and just go over the kind of dark parts and make the dark parts a little bit darker, or maybe even go in between the bright filters to add some sort of contrast. And it works really well in quite a lot of the cases. For example, here you see the light is coming from, of course, the sky, and this tree line is supposed to be a little bit darker, so I'm just gonna amplify that. And yeah, I think it works really well. I think I might even try to add quite a big minus exposure filter over pretty much the entire background right there. And yeah, maybe just another few very small plus exposure filters in between to kind of loosen up that lighting scheme and make some more interest and really amplify all of that lighting. So let's see before any rail filters, and you see it's so much flatter, so much more boring, and here's after, especially here the color pops, it's so much more dynamic and interesting. Once again, before, after. before, after. So because of course this is just for the overall look, I am not really going to pay too much attention to all of these detail adjustments, but of course you do want to pay attention to them if you print your picture or if you edit your own picture. But I think I'm just gonna leave that out, since all of these other adjustments don't really have too big of an impact, and I really just want to keep the video relatively short. Another thing that I'm definitely going to do though is grab a graduated filter and drag it over the sky here and make a relatively soft edge, and just go into the minus exposure even more and really dramatize this sky and these clouds. And I think that works really well. Maybe even mix that with contrast and a little bit of clarity to really bring out these structures. So let's just quickly see before that one graduated filter and after. Actually, I think because I brought down the exposure for the sky, it kind of amplified the color a little bit too much. So let me just bring down the saturation just for the sky, so we kind of get rid of this blue cast. And yeah, I think that works even better before that and after. I don't know about you, but I think when I crop down some of that as well, it might work even better, because it's almost kind of cut off these edges right here, these lines. So I think that actually works even better, and it really concentrates more on the actual geyser. So then, I think I might try to grab an adjustment brush and go here into the color and add a little bit of purple and just kind of drag or draw over some of these parts right here to add some more interest. This is a little bit too much, so let me go back to color and bring down the saturation, but I just want to add a little bit of interest, a little bit of color, and maybe even remove it in this river. But yeah, I actually think it works quite well. It's a very subtle adjustment, but I like it. Then let me think. I think I'm gonna grab another adjustment brush and this time remove the color and just add a little bit of contrast and draw over some portions here to really amplify, you know, some of these areas even more, just to add a little bit of contrast. I might have gone just a little bit too much into the minus exposure with the graduated filter for the sky, and yeah, that works even better. So yeah, I actually really like the picture. Maybe there's definitely some noise, so let me actually try to add some noise reduction. And I think in this particular case, it might even help to give the whole picture an even dreamier and even more kind of misty and mysterious kind of look. And actually, let me fine-tune the image and go back to the rail filters. And I just think this rail filter is not really needed, and I think it looks better without it. And maybe even add a little bit of custom vignetting with the adjustment brush, and just add a little bit minus exposure here on the sides. And you know, I know that this is a very dramatic edit, but I really like the look, and I think it works the best, at least in my personal opinion. So let's go here into the history and see where we started at, and this is a starting point. I mean, a completely different image. As I said at the start, it's really gonna push the boundaries of what is possible with a JPEG image, and from before to after. I think it's a really dramatic difference, but I really actually like it. You know, I played around with the picture before actually recording, and I tried all kind of different crops and go a little bit into the minus saturation, but I really liked this one the most at the end. Of course, this is just one of many possible edits and many possible looks that you could go for, but I hope you at least maybe got some inspiration, some ideas from it. And yeah, thank you once again very much for submitting the photo, and of course thank you all very much for watching. Be sure to subscribe for more edits just like this one, raw edits, landscape edits, Lightroom tutorials, and other photography videos in the future. So once again, thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great day, go out there and take some awesome pictures. See you in the next episode, and of course, take care.